So it being on or about 6:30, and seeing we have a quorum, I'm going to bring this meeting of the Easton Conservation Commission on November 1st, 2021 to order. Please note that we are, in keeping with the emergency order from Governor Baker, we are performing this board meeting remotely, conducted over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote, and attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be recorded by ECAT, both audio and video, and is either being broadcast live or streamed somewhere, or will be available later for playback. To join the remote meeting, just click on the link in the upper left-hand corner of the agenda, or dial in through the call-in number. If public participation, you just need to raise your hand and put some note in the chat, and we will recognize you. Please understand that in trying to keep this meeting as efficient as possible, try and limit each hearing to 15 minutes unless I authorize additional time. After 15 minutes, I'll determine whether or not we've covered all topics or we need to continue. Please ask that everyone contributing comments remain focused and concise in their presentations and discussions. We're expected to have reviewed permit presentations and materials prior to the hearing to contribute to maintaining an efficient discussion. Any material that a commissioner, applicant, or a member of the public presents that's not part of the permit record should be provided by email to the principal clerk and agent following the meeting. Please also note that on June 23rd, 2021, the commission voted to extend the delegation of signature authority to the environmental planner, in this case Jennifer Carlino, for all decisions issued during the duration of the emergency. Now, in order to establish quorum, we're going to take a roll call vote, announcing your name and your attendance. So Rory Caulfield's present.
Ben Carroll present.
Carol Lundeen present.
Okay, seeing we have a quorum, we will continue with the meeting. Thank you. First, before we start, I do want to note that if anybody's here for 58 Mill Street, that applicant has actually asked for a continuation. So I know it's only second on the agenda, but if you're here, you don't have to wait for that because we will not be discussing that this evening due to the applicant's request. Okay, so first up is 81 Summer Street. This is a continued hearing related to notice of intent for installation of underground utilities. And I am not a co-host, so I can't do it. There we go. I wonder it wouldn't allow me to do it. Okay, so bring up Eric Dias. Okay, Eric, you're here. You can turn on video and audio.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello,
Eric.
Hi.
How you doing? Mr. Chair, can you also bring up Stephanie Hoban if she's in the audience? She's with me tonight. I've got another meeting at 7 o'clock. I don't think this will take that long, but in the event that it does, Stephanie's going to close this one out for me.
Excellent.
Okay, so for the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering Solutions. Here with me tonight is one of our project engineers, Stephanie Hoban, representing Garcon Corp at 81 Summer Street. I almost forgot the address, but I found it. We were here at your last meeting to talk about the project. It is largely underground installation of utilities. I'm going to share my screen just to kind of refresh, but I'll be very quick about it. This guy. So what we talked about was this gray area that you see hatched in here is the existing pavement. And you can see underlying that gray area some utility trenching that's signified by the red hash mark here. Most of the utility trenching, they're for water and electric. 90 or 95% of that utility trenching is going to go through the buffer zone and stay within paved areas. There's going to be a little bit that's in already disturbed grassed areas. When we were last here, we had just responded to some comments from your agent that day, which we acknowledged did not give her time to review anything. So we thought best to continue and get to a point where she could review and confirm. And I think we've got a pretty favorable staff report letter from Jennifer at this point. So I think we're in reasonably good shape on this, but I'll be glad to answer any questions or refresh anybody further if we need to.
Jennifer?
Yeah, everything we requested to be revised has been revised on the plan. They withdrew the Wetland Protection Act permit because it is an exemption. And the only issue that you probably need to discuss is whether putting the markers on trees is appropriate. That's it.
So, Eric, you want to give us some perspective on which trees you want to locate it, the location of them, and how to ensure that they'll be visible?
Sure. So we haven't located specific trees yet. The idea was that we would space, hang some markers right at the tree line on substantial trees, spaced roughly 25 feet apart, about 6 feet high, 5 to 6 feet high. So they're right in the eye line as you go to the edge of the trees, or the edge of the lawn, I should say. Our thought just being it's not an extra post that we need to stick in the ground or anything like that. Surely, if the commission has another thought, if you'd rather see a post or a concrete bound with a medallion on it, I don't think we're going to fight too hard against that. So in some ways, I think we'll kind of defer to the whim of the, well, not the whim, excuse me, but the preference of the commission, I should say.
It sure does feel like whim sometimes, doesn't it? For a commission so bound by regulations, whim does not come into play here too often.
No, I certainly didn't mean to suggest that we have.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I took it with what it was intended for sure. So are you proposing a specific size, notice, or marker, or what are you proposing here? Just, I would say that the tiny little medallions we use probably isn't appropriate in this case.
Okay. We can certainly go with something a little bit bigger than that. I would defer to the board, or maybe Jennifer has something that she's used in the past. I think we've seen some plaques on other projects that I'm not going to mention by name that are very, very big. I think we'd like to avoid those if we can, because we don't want this to look like a freeway, whereas it's a driveway. But certainly somewhere in the middle, I think we won't take exception.
I was thinking of the exact same project and saying, I don't want that. So,
yeah, I don't want that.
So I know the project you're talking about. So, so I'm open to the idea. I'd be happy to hear from Ben or Carol.
I mean, in my opinion, as long as there's something marking the wetlands, I'm happy. I agree. I'd like it to be bigger than the standard medallion and smaller than the traffic speed limit sign. So if we can find some type of a happy medium, I'm good. I don't know what sizes these things tend to come in standard.
Maybe a 4x4 or a 6x6 inch, something like that might be appropriate here.
That works for me.
That would be appropriate for me. Carol, comments?
Right, Mr. Diaz, I think you said something about concrete posts. I'd like to hear more your thoughts about that.
Yeah, what we've done on the other projects in the past, so we typically do these markers one of two ways. We either hang a medallion on the trees that are there, or what we've done in the past is concrete posts. They're a little bit lower to the ground, but we would install them similar to a roadway bound, leave them sticking up out of the ground about a foot or so, and put a medallion right on top of those. The downfall to those is they're a little bit more expensive on the installation, sure, but they're lower to the ground, so they don't maybe catch your eye as you walk toward the tree line. Whereas if we hang something on the trees, presumably it would be at head height.
Right, so the problem with trees is they're not permanent, as
That
we
is a
found out
downfall.
this weekend.
Yeah, that is a downfall. The
Good
tree
point,
falls,
Carol.
we lose that sign.
Right, so what about something like 2.5, 3 feet off the ground?
I think that's something we can look at. The only issue with that is when we have a concrete bound that sticks that far off the ground, we end up with like a 6 foot or a 7 foot tall concrete bound, right? Because we have to embed it in the ground and bury a portion of it so it doesn't tip over. Something like that might be more appropriate for a sign. And then I guess I would ask, are we getting closer to that roadway sign feel that we're trying to avoid?
How about rocks? Big rocks.
Big rocks in this case, my only aversion to that would be that we would have to import them from off-site, because I don't think we have rocks on this site that we'll be excavating or digging up that we could recycle for that purpose.
What about like you know, a minimum 4x4-inch sign every 20 feet, and the applicant or whoever owns the property has to make sure that they're up. Right? I mean, that's a condition that we'd have anyway, right, Rory?
They're permanent markers, yeah.
Yes, if the tree falls, they still have to go put it on a different tree or replace it.
Well, I could live with that. You know, one thing I'll say is this being a common driveway, it will have a homeowners association agreement. So there will be somebody who can police ongoing conditions, which is a favorable thing in this case, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. I guess for me, I'd like to see something bigger than 4x4. I mean, that's pretty small if you're driving by, especially.
Yeah, but I don't think it's meant to be sort of as you're driving by. I think it's more that if you're walking and you're entering into those woods, or if not, I mean, this is a driveway. And so from my perspective, I think that something visual at the tree line is going to be impactful. And I think that that's what I'm looking for, is that visual recognition, especially if you're doing it at 5 feet high. And I'm assuming Eric said 5 to 6 feet high because he's a guy and he knows it's above him. I've been married long enough that I know that I bring it down a foot from where I want it to sort of be that way. So for me, something at 5 foot high on a tree that's visible is probably the best marker I can get, unless I put in a post to get to be 5 feet high, and I don't necessarily think I want to put in a street sign type of post. That's my only thought process there, is that you're keeping it quasi-natural as far as not putting something in that area that isn't already there. I mean, that's just my thought process.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you were talking about the difference between driving and walking. I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's something about people will possibly be walking and driving on this, both. Walking their dogs, going for a walk. It's kind of a long driveway. So yeah, as long as they're visible.
Agreed.
Yeah, there's about 20 feet between the edge of driveway and the woods. It narrows a little bit to a different spot when it's closer to the end of the driveway, but it's about 20 feet. So there's a good fair bit of lawn between them. So I think that, you know, I'd be happy with a 4x4 sign that, Jennifer, can you get them language that we want on there?
Well, at the last meeting, we did look at markers.
So yeah, just give him that language to put on there. How's that? And that would be, you know, with our number on it, if there's any questions type of thing. I mean, I think that's we should probably start taking that approach. So we'll use
You
this.
should definitely try to make them uniform from project to project, so you can start to understand what they're for. Yeah.
Agreed. So I'm okay with proposing that we use a 4x4, 5 feet high, every 20 to 25 feet on existing trees that are on the tree line, so they're visible. Okay.
I would add live trees, not snags.
Okay. Fair enough. And any other questions?
Nope. Do you have a draft do you have a draft order of conditions? Were there any other comments on that? Or do you want to wait till after you close the meeting?
Is there anything I need to be concerned here? No, I think we're good. Any public comment, 81 Summer Street? Seeing none, Eric, I assume you want to close the meeting?
Yes, we do.
I'll make a motion to close the meeting, issue a permit for work and order conditions noting that permanent markers shall be affixed to live trees at 5 feet high, every 20 to 25 feet, the sign being 4x4 in size with language as provided by the agent.
Carol second.
So that was Caulfield's and Carol's second. Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol,
Lundin,
aye.
aye. Oh, sorry.
Talk about that. Carol, aye.
Lundin, aye.
Okay, so there we go, 3-0.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Stephanie,
Nice.
thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Except for our home.
Okay.
Thanks, Nick.
Take care.
So I just want to know for the record that Commissioner Spadia is joining us at 6:45 p.m.
Hey guys. Simon.
Hey,
Hey, Mike.
So next up, 58 Mill Street has requested a continuance. So make a motion to continue 58 Mill Street to November 15th.
Carol second.
are they really gonna have enough time to get everything to us in a week
No,
for that meeting?
no. Not in my opinion,
Yeah.
but you're the one. Do you have? Did they give you any indication? I mean, I saw the email today, so they didn't give you an indication.
I didn't actually see the email, so
Oh, I'm sorry. It got forwarded to me by Tish, so I assumed that you had seen it. So I don't know, and I guess this is I just want to take 1 minute to discuss this. Is that we have this come up that where we continue these meetings 2 weeks at a time when it's really only a week, right? And I had actually asked last week, beginning of the week, saying I assume 58 Mill is going to continue because I only see one. I see our comment from one of our consultants in the file, and I don't see anything from them. Right? This was Tuesday, I think, and so no, they wanted to come in and make a presentation and sort of respond a little bit to the meetings. I'd really like to have these meetings be, let's get it done. Let's talk about substance, and sort of be able to not just trickle it down the road here. So, I just don't have a thought process of when the applicant requests a 2-week continuance and I think they need 4 weeks without them here. What do I do?
Well, I think honestly, I think you're kind of stuck in that we almost have to just kick it over to the next meeting and see what they do. But I think probably the more holistic solution is to start explaining to applicants that we'd prefer them ask for more time in the event that we think it's complicated at the first meeting. And I mean, it's not uncommon too that we'll have applicants say, I want to be back in a month or 2 months, depending on the scope of the project. But I do feel like most of our continuances are right before the meetings. That's my thought.
Right. It is a request from the applicant. Is that right? So is it really up to the chair or the full board?
I'll pull the regs for the next time, but my understanding is the commission may allow up to whatever the applicant is requesting, but it doesn't say shall.
Wouldn't the recourse to that be to vote on their project without them being here?
No, I think you would be able to just continue the hearing to a later date, but
Okay.
we'll have to double check the regs on that before we do it.
Which, for the record, I'm not suggesting that we vote on projects
no.
like that.
No, but I do wonder, at what point, it's funny because we've had to refile this one and the one we're just about, one of the ones following this, is that, because the board changed so much that we didn't have enough members to vote on it, because it got continued. So at what point do we as a board say, listen, it seems to be about year, tends to be sort of if we can't get it done in a year, we almost have to sort of start over and get a fresh look at stuff, although some of the stuff is so complicated and maybe there's enough continuity in the board that we don't have to do that, but something to think about. So that discussion having been made, I think we've covered the bases. Jen's going to get us some information about what our regulatory leeway is on this so we understand, can we tell the applicant, no, you need 4 weeks, we'll see you in 4 weeks. So I'll make a motion to continue 58 Mill Street to November 15th as requested by the applicant.
Carol, second.
Carol with the second. Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundin, aye.
Katie, aye.
Thank you. And the next up is 19 Emily Lane. The applicant is requested to 11:15. I think we knew that, though. Did we know that? I think we didn't. Yeah, they knew they couldn't get it done to us. So make a motion to continue 19 Emily Lane to November 15th.
Katie, second.
Nice. Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundin, aye.
Katie, aye.
560 Foundry Street. Again, we have a continuance to November 15th. I do want to make a little bit of note here. I don't think November 15th is going to happen. I just want to give us sort of we're probably talking mid-December before we see them. So, and I'm probably being optimistic. So, 560 Foundry Street, make a motion to continue to November 15th.
Lundin, second.
Nice. One of these, somebody else will make the motion and I can second it and we can hit for the cycle. So roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundin, aye.
Katie, aye.
Okay, next up is the certificate of compliance for 15 Jira Lane. As I understand this, the homeowner has not notified the engineer that they've done what's outstanding on this. They had to clear a bunch of debris out of the wetlands.
I only heard about it being finished and cleared about 4 o'clock today, right before I was leaving at 4:30.
Nice.
So they know that they'll be continued to the next meeting and I'll do the final site inspection.
Excellent. I
So
really,
you just postpone.
if we didn't have the power outages, I would have gone yesterday. It just was a crazy week here. So,
You don't need to do anything. You just no action until we'll put it on the next meeting.
okay, no action on 15 Jira Lane. We're going to move along. 390 to 394 Foundry Street. This is the second time this request for certificate of compliance has come before us. There was a question last time about some old household furniture and metal debris and whatnot in the woods adjacent to the property. As I understand it, the engineer has come back and said that is not on this piece of property, therefore is not subject to this permit. And therefore they won't be taking any actions. The other issue that we had was that they had Jennifer had requested that the plans be stamped as built, and they say that their professional approach on this is to stamp them ready. I don't know. I don't remember what the language was.
Record survey plan.
Yeah, recorded survey plan or something like that. It was something that sounded official. Jennifer, do you think we can move forward?
I mean, you can. That was just everyone calls them as built because it shows what they built.
I'm with you. So I'd like to vote on this, and then I have the discussion about the debris. Okay, if we can. Unless people want to have a discussion about the debris now.
Well, is it clear that the material is not on the property?
It is. To me, it was. We can talk about what the source of the material was, but it is clearly on a piece of property next to this that is owned by the town of Easton.
Sounds like somebody's dumping.
Maybe. So I think based upon, oh, hang on, Mike Andrade is raising his hand. Sorry. I'm gonna promote him. Is he the engineer or something?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm trying to promote him. Oh, there it comes. Okay, there you are, Mike. You can turn on your camera and your audio.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Not used to not being able to control my camera, my microphone, but yeah. So I'm here to answer any questions that anyone has. There was some discussion about record survey versus as-built plan. That's just a convention that we use that we've used since the past president. And there's a connotation for an as-built that indicates that you've been there and seen every piece of pipe that's gone on the ground and all that. And no one's doing that as far as an engineer. So the record survey is, the result of the survey work that we did when the work was completed, as it's ongoing intermittently, and from the contractor as well. So that's the distinction there. They're one and the same, but.
So since you raised the issue, so how do we know that the project was constructed as permitted? If there wasn't somebody who was attesting that the project was constructed below ground as permitted?
Well, we are attesting. What we're saying, we're not there every day, taking constant measurements and elevations and all that. That's the only distinction.
That's not a comfortable distinction you're putting into my hands, right?
I understand the confusion. I've run into this with other.
Well, it's not a confusion. It's a concern.
Okay. So
I've never had an engineer in my 5 years on the board come before me and say, I'm not willing to attest that this project conforms materially to the conditions as put forth and that the work was done in accordance with the permit. So and everything it's the first time I've had one stamped not as built. I mean, my own septic system here is stamped as an as built. So
I'm not attesting that either. That we're certainly attesting. I put my stamp on the record survey plan on the affidavit. If you want it to be called as built, I'll do that. It's not a big deal for us. But no, please don't misunderstand me.
I think that part of the issue is that and I understand. Believe me, I understand your position. And if I was in your shoes, I might want to take that position because it protects you a little bit of if something's not in conformance with what the permit was issued as. But it doesn't put us in a good position because now we sort of have to accept, well, hopefully everybody did their job and the engineer can only sign off on what it looks like now. So that's just the concern. So I'm not here especially for a project that is related to the town of Easton to create a huge issue for anyone. I'm trying to make just a hypothetical discussion about this. And the concern it raises to me that you're willing to draw the line that protects you more than it protects me. So, any other questions for the applicant's representative? Okay, any public comment for 390, 394 Foundry Street? Seeing none. I'm going to make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 390, 394 Foundry Street. I don't think I need anything here, right, Jennifer?
No.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Lundin, aye.
Beatty, aye.
Thanks, Mike, for hanging in there.
Okay, thank you.
Rory, what was the end result there? Mike said it was okay and easy to make it say as built. You're going to provide, you can change the label or no?
I'm willing to leave it as is.
It's not a problem. I can if you like. I'm not looking to cause any trouble with that. Just the name on the plan.
Jennifer, I will stand up for you if that's what
Yeah, I
you
mean, that would be preferred. That's
So let me amend the motion that issue certificate of compliance and have the applicant deliver a set of plans that say as built.
Beatty, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Lundin, aye.
Beatty, aye.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you. Good night.
thank you.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the dumping that has occurred on the adjacent property. Now, there was an implication from the response that we received was that somehow that this had come up an easement, the power line easement that's next to this, as opposed to more likely that someone from this piece of property went and put their used furniture out into the woods, which it was clearly sort of arranged in a way that looked like it was probably around a fire pit. This was not some random, dump a bunch of old furniture. It was all upright. It was, although the mattress and the
For the
box
bug
bed,
boring.
yeah, that was not set up in a way that was just done. But I would say that it really did sort of stretch the truth. Now the problem is it's not the applicant's property. The second issue is that this now goes into the hands of DPW to have to clean this up. Okay, if we could possibly get DPW to do it, and or get some volunteers to pull this stuff out of there. And from my sense of where it was, it would be challenging. I don't think like it's right next to the easement. Like I think there's an easement, but it's probably about 100 feet from the easement. So I don't know how they get it out of there. So and it would be in the Easton Housing Authority's, best interest to have it not out there either. I'm sure it's an eyesore, but any comments from anybody? I don't know if anybody's seen it. I think maybe Jennifer and I are the only two who've seen it.
I haven't seen it.
What do you think about, asking the abutter, asking the abutter for written permission to remove the material to go on his or her property?
Well, Easton Housing Authority is the owner, the landowner. So
Okay.
it's another town property, right? It still comes back to, can you get DPW to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, a month ago, I asked DPW to remove some graffiti off of the old pond dam. And it's a month later, and believe me, I'm not about to ask them anything in the next month to something as, can you get out there and, take the graffiti off? It's in a place where it's really, I mean, I was thinking today as I drove by, geez, I wish I knew. I would, I'd have to go out and buy the equipment to do it, which, I could do it, and I probably should do it. Maybe that's really what I ought to do. Because I drive by it every day and it bugs me, so I guess I should do it. But, I don't think we don't have the resources in the DPW crew to do this. Right? I mean, this is probably a half a day project to get DPW out there to do this with a crew of like 3 guys. So where
How
would
much
it
stuff
take?
is it?
There's probably 2 or 3 couches, a box spring, mattress, a chair, a whole bunch of metal debris. I'm not even quite sure I mean, you could fill up a dump truck pretty easily with what's out there. You might have to do two dump truck loads. So this could
Or at
be,
least 3 couches
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
arranged, like
I was
hanging out smoking there.
I was gonna say maybe do like a Boy Scout thing, but that's kind of excessive. That's beyond a cleanup in their regard.
Right.
I'll commit to pulling some stuff out with you, Rory. That's about as creative as I'm gonna get, though. I don't know. I don't have like a great solution. We could ask some local contractors, but
Oh, there we go. When we need a public interest,
yeah.
absolutely.
you could do that.
We did this on one property, and actually we were gonna do it, and it turned out that somebody had already volunteered from the community to go out there with one of their contractor trailers and fill it up with. This was over on Sam Wright Field, and there was a whole bunch of this kind of stuff in the woods. They went out there, got it, pulled it. Somebody opened the gate for them so they could get as close as possible. Carried this stuff out, put it in the trailer, drove it out. This is something. Put it on our list for public interest, Jennifer.
Yeah,
Right,
good idea.
this could work as a public interest thing, right?
Absolutely.
As long as we got proper permission to do it, which it would seem to me Easton Housing Authority would give us permission to go on their property to get this stuff out of the woods that's right next to it.
Right. And the public benefit is also overriding public benefit. It's not just do us a favor. It's
but it's not overriding public benefit to me.
right, depending on the proposed activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying this is a major, like allow somebody to put a house in it, ACEC buffer zone, you know what I mean? So now I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something that they need something public interest on a single lot where they're trying to do an addition or something. This could qualify. And this is not a tiny thing for someone to do. You know what I mean? This would take a contractor a couple of days with a couple of guys. I mean, a day with a couple of guys to take multiple trips to the dump to get rid of this stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
sounds
it.
good.
I think that's probably the solution. There you go, Ben. You came up with the idea. Excellent. Okay,
Employee of the month.
there you go.
You got the parking spot.
So he was
Wondering
here
when I
first
get the
today.
badge. Yeah, no badge yet.
Okay, meeting minutes. I know a couple of them were circulated last meeting. I had them recirculated this morning, along with some other things. Let's start with the executive session meeting minutes from November 16th, 2020. I do want to say here that at first I thought that this issue was resolved, and I think we can approve these but not release it. The issue is not yet resolved. So I think it is still related to some real estate transaction that's in process. So I think that we can review and approve them, but we'll vote later to release them. But it's better to have them approved. We should have approved them back in January when they were first presented to us, to be quite honest. I went back to the agenda. We actually got them in our packet on January 25th, and I neglected to raise the issue. So, any questions about the minutes?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve but not release the executive session minutes from November 16th, 2020.
Lundin, second.
Roll call vote is Caulfield's aye.
Carol abstain.
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
So that was to approve but not release. Okay. Now we go to the regular meeting minutes of, start with August 23rd. Just two minor changes on page 4 in the public comment by Mrs. Brockman. It's mentioned as national heritage. It should be, there's 3 mentions of it, it should be changed to natural heritage. And on page 7, if we can just remove the entire paragraph just prior to where it says Miss Lundin left the meeting. It starts with Rory, I need you to get plans. I think that just is meant to be some internal notes between us that didn't happen. So. Okay. It makes sense without it, so
Yeah.
I'm just voting to remove it. Any other comments?
No,
Okay, so I make a motion to accept the minutes with the changes as noted on page 4 and page 7.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Lundin, aye.
ADI.
Okay, next up is minutes for October 4th. The only question I have here is that the footer is on page 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'll say September 20th. So my date just needs to get updated.
Good catch.
Any other comments? So I make a motion to accept and approve the minutes of October 4th, noting that the date and the footer should be corrected before release.
ADI second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Lundin, aye.
ADI.
Okay, next up, so these, I got minutes for October 18th. Jennifer, are these ready to go? Because they actually, there's some minor changes here, but there's some, it's almost like this was like the first run of these, which is okay if it's right. But like the date isn't in the header. There's a couple other changes, and then at the end it just sort of there's a motion to adjourn, and then it's sort of shorthand for motion to adjourn.
Oh, all right, I'd leave them off then.
Okay.
Yeah, wait till the next meeting.
Yeah, so we'll clean that up. I mean, it actually was fine. There were a couple of minor things that we could have taken care of that weren't big. Okay, so we're going to defer October 6th, October 18th till next meeting. Now, wayfinding work group, we actually were supposed to meet on Wednesday, and that was the morning after the storm. So that actually got canceled. But there was something that I do want to give you, and I didn't do it last time because we were a little pressed for time. Jennifer, I swear to God, I'll keep this to 5 minutes.
The time is 7:13
I gotcha.
for the record.
I know. I want to be done just like everybody else. I just wanted to give you guys a visual of what we were talking about last time. So just let me save this to my hard drive so I can share it. Now I will say that, so you should be able to see that now. So I will say that we have not made any decisions about these. These were a preliminary presentation. We talked about what we liked, we didn't like. I talked about that last time. And so you can see here, we talked about last time, this arch meant to be sort of the Olmsted Richardson sort of connection there. This is the Center Street Civil War Monument. I think there really wasn't a lot of enthusiasm about that one, considering maybe it's not all that recognizable what it really is. This one here is that arch with a compass rose, and here are the shovels and variations of that with and without the arch, with and without the incorporated. Easton was actually incorporated. I didn't even know this in 1725, not just established. There is some discussion about whether the rose is a little bit too busy underneath this type of symbolism. Here's a version of it without the shovels, just the compass with the east highlighted. This is another one that sort of is representative of sort of the nature of the town to be a lot of open space and green and winding and whatnot. I think that a lot of people felt this was a little busy for this type of signage. I actually drove by and looked at what the Conservation Commission signage has on it. We have a bluebird or some sort of bird with a tree in the background on our signage. Eventually, I think that we'll probably incorporate this kind of logo onto the signage. It doesn't mean we can't continue to use some of the other things we do, but we do want to have consistent signage throughout the town. The other intention is on a lot of signage is to actually put QR codes so people can, go to a GIS map of maybe where they are, or if they're in town somewhere, they can get a local map to what, maybe what businesses are around there or what other features might be available, especially with the Discover Easton app that's out now. But different variations here. So I show it to you. So here's another one with just the shovel and just one shovel. And then here's some other ones that really were sort of, I think, a little bit more that we thought were a little bit busy and probably not all that readable with stuff being underneath the words. It becomes a little bit more difficult, especially with people who might have vision issues as well. So, some other type of things. So I just wanted to give you some idea. We'll probably have another meeting in a couple of weeks once the person in charge of this group is actually the head of DPW. So once his plate clears a little bit, we'll probably get another meeting scheduled. But any thoughts? You guys want to give me some feedback? What you liked, what you didn't like?
Sure. I tend to like the scenic one with the snaking road. Mm-hmm. The sky has room for something. I thought maybe we could chuck in some birds or ducks, geese. That'll suggest some motion, just in silhouette.
I like the Civil War memorial. I think the ones with the shovels, they kind of look like pizza paddles.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
And
those are called peels, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know. I like the Civil War monument. I think it's dead center of town, and I thought it was pretty recognizable. I tend to think that the ones on the last page that didn't have the words underneath them all kind of look more like corporate logos than
I agree.
Than town signs.
Yeah, I agree.
And I also, if you want my honest opinion, I tend to think that the compass with the eastern arrow highlighted just feels a little bit too modern for a 1725 town.
Yeah.
My unartistic, uncultured opinion of that.
Okay.
Right. I like the Civil War memorial, but it's really hard to make out what it is.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, and I think once you get to, these are the type of signages you would see them used on. If you can imagine that on this type of sign, like that would get lost, right?
Good point.
You'd probably get lost on what that is. And that's one of the issues that might be a little bit challenging to do. I think it works on a sign like this. It's nice and big. And this is a 6 foot tall sign that would be at least a foot or two high if it was there. But you get into some of these other signages, and it becomes a little bit more challenging to figure out what the little gray thing is. So.
Yeah, the scenic road's pretty nice though. Oh, it kind of reminds you of like Bay Road. I don't know, that's why I saw it. I was like, oh, Bay Road.
It reminded me of, I thought of looking out from Tufts Farm towards Flyaway Pond.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like that little turn there. Yeah. That's a good point.
This is just what made me think about.
I like it. That's a good little spot.
Yeah. I would like to add about the Civil War memorial. It's basically most likely that's a man, and if we could also in some way represent women and children, I think that would be more welcoming.
Yeah, and I think that there has been some discussion about whether or not the Civil War monument is as inclusive as we would want to represent. So I think that's the one maybe cultural takeaway that I might say is probably present about the Civil War monument. I know what it is, I know what it represents, but I think for others coming into town, it may be misrepresented by them, or they may not just feel as included, and that's okay. And I think we just need to be recognize that that's a possibility for some people. And if we want to be inclusive, we should probably sort of say, well, that's probably not the symbolism that we want to use.
Right. I know, the bricks in the arch, instead of having them all one color, we could make them into a rainbow.
Mhm.
Or colorize, maybe not a rainbow, but colorize them in some way.
Yep. But I think they had been trying to sort of stick with the orange and black just because that's sort of the color of the town. But I don't know how well orange will actually hold up. It will become faded over time and may actually turn to be something more sort of salmon-y color. So that'd be interesting to see what happens 5 years from now on the blazing sun. But
Good point.
all things to consider. Okay, so 5 minutes. I think I went over, but you get some conversation. So
It wasn't just you.
okay, so I will stop sharing. I did want to give that as a little bit of a tease on this. Jennifer.
So in your packet, we gave you some proposed regulatory changes. There's a lot crossed out, mostly because it's already in Wetland Protection Act, so we don't need to keep repeating it, just to make it a little easier to read. So I don't know, did people have time to take a look at it? And then I just gave you all the other stuff to cross-reference. It's mentioned, different sections are mentioned, so I thought it would be easier if I just copied it for you and just put it in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like the where you put the details in about, especially about the 50-foot, the distance from certain wetland resources. I think that helps us define exactly what, just because it's a small thing, if it's too close to something, you got to ask. So I
I think
think
the distance is probably more important than the square footage.
right. So, I like that. Obviously, I think we need to come up with a consistent square footage of what we think for patios and decks and things like that we think are small enough to be considered minor. I know you proposed some things here, whether it's 200 or 250. Is 200 what a deck a shed doesn't need a building permit for?
Yeah.
Okay, I like keeping it with that because that lines up with the building permit, so that's good. And so, I mean, I think that making it clear that in-ground pools aren't the same as above-ground pools, and no matter where we are. So I think that those were good comments to me. I think you hit what we had talked about. Mm-hmm. From that perspective, I think that we've got a clear basis of what to work with here. The other comment is, well, let's break this up into two things. I know you proposed a fee change too. So, any other comments about proposed exceptions?
Is 250 a good amount, or do we need an amount at all?
I think we probably do need an amount, but
okay.
I is 250. So 250 is going to be. So 15 by 15 is 225, right? So, so a little bit bigger than that. What's 15 by 20? It's 300. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I might even be willing to go to 300, but
300.
That's what I'm
300.
What did we say about the shed a minute ago?
200.
because that lines up with the building permit.
Right.
But 300 square feet is still you're not talking about a huge structure.
No.
10 by, yeah, 10 by 30 could look pretty big, depending on where it goes.
But it's more than 50 feet away in existing lawn, buffer zone only.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it still gets a pre-construction review site inspection. So if there are any issues, then we have them take care of it before we sign off on the building permit.
So, I mean, the thing is, we still get an opportunity to see these, right?
Yep.
And so, if there's something that we don't think matches what the exception is, Jennifer cannot sign off on the building permit.
Right, I would just say, well, you need a wetland permit.
Yeah.
Then they get to come talk to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I can agree with that.
And so what do you think about patio, that as well, 300 square feet?
So do we want to make any condition that the patio is, I'm okay with it. I just.
You can leave it out.
No,
It
I'm
doesn't
not.
have to be an exemption, you can take that out.
No, I'm just, see, if you were using patio pavers, I'd say, yeah, go ahead, right? Although, our concept here is that most people, by the time they put in pavers and they fill in the gaps, it becomes impervious anyway. So I'm really not, that's why I started to say something. I said, well, hang on a second, 2 years from now, it's impervious.
They do still have to dig it up and put in a base.
Right.
So it's not like there isn't earthwork happening. So if you're more comfortable with just removing that and not making it an exemption, we can still do that.
No, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Really, I am.
Do we want to get into details of permeable pavers? And if you're going to go that route, they need to be permeable.
Well, I think if it's already an existing lawn and it's outside the no disturb zone, I'm okay with it.
That's what I kind of keep coming back to. Is like
if Jennifer went on the site and saw that it was, off the edge of a steep incline, she's not going to approve it and say, well, hang on a second, this isn't what we were talking about exceptions, right? So I think that we've got enough control in those situations. We're talking about going out into a level lawn where they just want to put in a patio or a deck or something like that makes more sense to me. So
it would be at the discretion of the agent.
It's subject to pre-construction review by the agent. Yeah, and I think we are trying to give Jennifer the discretion to not have to have these come to us as a permit and say, yes, Jennifer, we trust you to make the right decision to protect the wetlands in these minor cases. Yes, I agree. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Jennifer, I have a question.
Okay, so what patios under how many square feet?
300 and under.
All right.
I'm good with that.
And still the 50 feet from the same things.
Yep.
50 feet, good. Okay. So BBW, land subject to flooding.
Yep.
And I guess the 100 feet from the vernal pool as well.
Yep.
Keep it the same.
Yep.
Okay.
Jennifer, I'm not quite sure. I'm looking at your. I apologize. I did not have a chance to look at these. I'm kind of a regulations nut. Help me understand where you have whole paragraphs that are just X'd out. What's the purpose of that?
It's already in Wetland Protection Act. So
Uh-huh.
we just don't need to repeat it again. Because I can tell you any consultant or engineer who's looking at the bylaw and the regulations, they just what's the quick and dirty? What's the difference between the two? You don't want to have to reread all the same things that are already in Wetland Protection Act.
Uh-huh, so I see. So you would remove it?
Yep.
So that means us commissioners who are accustomed to going and looking at our bylaw and regs have to find out where this is in the state, in the WPA.
Well, I mean, I think that we should be aware of the WPA as well, right?
Sure,
You know, as well as the wetland regulations, but, so, I mean, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, and I think that's part of an overarching discussion that we've had in the past, that we've got 60 or 70 pages of regs that when you actually look at them, it's probably about 5. Because there's just so much stuff that is repeated and repeated section over section, and there's slight variations where I don't think there's intended to be a variation. It's just stated a little bit differently. It's really meant to be the same performance standards and the same waiver requirements and everything else, that you could consolidate some of these regs so that each section was about this big in reference. It must meet performance standards in 50322 and 50 and waiver requirements in 50323, and that's it. And not have to repeat it again.
right.
And I think that there's a lot that goes on that way in
Right.
the regulations. So.
Yeah, I agree. I have such a hard time reading the state regulations because the way the text is formatted, it's hard to tell where you are, what subchapter you're in.
I have experience doing it, so at the state level. So, yes, I when I'm reading the regs, sometimes I have to put at the top of it what section I'm in. Is it you're like on the 5th page of section 10.04?
Right.
But,
yeah, it's like getting lost.
Could be.
And it makes it, for me, it would take me longer. I know we want to look, for the long term and, future iterations of the commission, but, it would slow me down. So
No, but I think the intention here is to try and streamline the regs. I mean, if there's a reference to it, then I'd rather just say, okay, you have to, I don't think there's a need to repeat what's already somewhere else.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think maybe for individuals like yourself, it may be a little bit more challenging, but I think overall, the streamlining of the regulations makes it more understandable for everyone. And I think that's what one of our goals here is to actually make the wetland regulations, the wetland bylaws, something that others and everyone can understand, and so that they aren't as intimidated by what does it mean.
Right.
And because you've read them, and Ben has read them, Mike has read them. It takes a couple reads of some of this stuff to understand what we're trying to say, and so.
Are we sure that there are no differences in definitions in the definition sections?
Applicable differences? I mean, I don't think there's substantial when we're trying to. Is there a specific one you want to highlight here?
No, I'm just wondering if the definitions are pretty consistent. We're going to, be deleting entire sections. I want to make sure that the definitions are going to hold up.
I don't think any of those are different than the act or your bylaw.
Yeah, we don't have time to go through that right now.
Yeah, I mean, you have time to look. If you come across something, I know you sort of said that you didn't have a chance to review it in as much detail as you would like. So, I think certainly we're not ready to vote on this. This is just a conceptual conversation still.
This isn't the public, the publicized meeting where we go over it. This is just
we still have a couple of meetings to go before we get to that. Where we have to hammer out the exact language, and then we would take it to publishing it as a public hearing, where we get public comment, and then we could vote on it at that point. So.
Right. So I want to ask, throw it out there. I think there may be, there are probably many typos and repetitions, but there's one typo in particular that just I would request that we have a look at and consider changing if it is indeed a typo.
Is it in this section?
No, it's not. Just as long as we're going to go before the public. So it's in 50322, which is about waivers, and 50223, which is about ACECs. So it's in 50323B1. Where it says the second sentence is therefore the applicant shall follow the process outlined in 50323, and it just refers to itself. So I think what it is meant to be is 50322. Because in an ACEC, the standards for a waiver have to be met. I think that's the intention there.
It would seem to me to be that correct, is that probably 50322, but I'd have to go back and look at everything myself before I agree, but at a quick read. And marking up my copy. My copy.
Great. Thank you for having a look at that.
There's other typos in there, by the way. But,
right.
Yeah.
No, this is an ACEC, so I just kind of feel like let's clean that up with this opportunity.
Yeah. So the other thing was that Jennifer, you had proposed. Any other comments about this before we move on? Jennifer, you had proposed a change to the fees for septic systems. So can you just review for me at least, what does the current fee structure for a septic system look like in Easton?
Right now, they have to go under single family dwelling at 525.
Okay. So they get charged the same amount as if they were building a new home.
Yeah.
Well, it
It's
doesn't
something they're trying to fix to improve the environment. And I mean, it's kind of a big hit as it is, that repairing a septic system and getting the engineering and all the permits and then the construction. It's a lot of money just to try to improve something. So, to be hit with another 525, and I mean, the legal notices are almost 200. We're trying to knock those down to, a more modest fee, would be appreciated. And I think you've had a few letters in your notices of intent recently about, hey, can you, do something about the cost of the septic system?
So do you, so give me some perspective on the kind of work that you have to put into a septic system review.
I mean, there's still a site inspection and preparing permits, but it's not as significant as doing a permit or the inspections for the single family dwelling.
Right.
I mean, the fee is only supposed to be the cost to provide the service, not just sort of a random amount.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
You absolutely agree with you 100%.
Yes.
That's why I asked the question to differentiate between is it significantly less than what it does for a single family home? You tell me it is, and so my last question would be, do we know what neighboring towns like? I mean, obviously you know what Norton charges, and Mansfield.
Norton's 25.
Okay, so we're a little higher than Norton. I'm not quite sure I'd agree with 25, but any other thoughts from other people?
Is it worth distinguishing, right? Like if someone's trying to go from a cesspool to a septic system because they are trying to improve it versus someone who's selling their house and changing the septic system over as part of the sale? Just a thought.
So I don't think it changes Jennifer's work though, right?
Yeah.
Or even our
Or
work.
Tish, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
Jennifer,
that's the
Tish,
standard.
us. I mean, I don't think it changes any of the staff's work, whether or not it's I'm trying to fix my own septic system where I'm planning to live here for the next 25 years, or whether I have to, I'm going under, Title, 5 inspection to try to sell my home.
I mean, the
That's fair.
septic system and the plans, everything has to be 50 feet away anyway. All we're looking at is the location and grading and final stabilization. The Board of Health does the whole review on the type of system and the design. We don't really get involved in any of that. We're just the location and how close are you to the wetland, and then just the construction term issues. It's a pretty minor application.
Based upon the information you provided here today, and I'm willing to hear from others as well, of course, I'm willing, I think the change is appropriate. And I know that we did say to the couple of applicants that did ask us over the past few months that we would take a look at fees when we would next regulatory change that we were going to consider. So apropos, here we are living up to what our commitment was. So I'm okay with making the change to $150. That seems to be more in line with what our actual involvement in this is. Any other questions or comments from someone?
Sure, this is Carol. I think 150 is will help a lot of people want to do the right thing. I think that's a good move. I'm also just want to clarify, Rory, you seemed maybe to be suggesting that the fees somehow subsidize the agent's salary. So when you talk about how much of the agent's time it takes to do her work, are you suggesting that the fees go to the agent's salary?
No, the state law, there's a whole process for coming up with your fees. And so the state law just says the cost to provide the permit should only be the cost to actually produce the permit. And that's where he's coming in, or speaking for you, but that's where he's coming in. But well, how much work does it actually cause, for you and Tish to prepare all of this stuff?
Right. So I see. So it's not just the agent's time; it's also the admin's time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the staff's time. Yeah.
Yep.
Because my time, I'm free. So still, they haven't given me a raise yet. So.
So does 150 cover it then? When you think about, benefits, insurance, salary.
I mean, I didn't go in depth in keeping like billable hours to figure that out. It seems like a reasonable number to me, but that's up to
I think
all of you. I threw it out there. We'll see what you say.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I tried to sort of take it from the approach of compared to what we charge for a single family dwelling, 5.5, is it relative to it? And it seemed to me that Jennifer told me it's less than half as much work. So I said, okay, it's in the ballpark. I'm not going to try and do the detailed analysis of what the last 20 septic system properties or permits took us to do. To me, that would be not worth our effort. But I tried to get it in the ballpark of if 525 is a full home. Jennifer tells me it's at least less than half of it. That gets us down to 250, and it's under that. I'm in the ballpark. To me, that's how I approached it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want it to be more like 200, we can certainly do that as well. And
I trusted Jennifer's expert opinion on this that 150 was appropriate.
I'm good with 150 based on what we've heard.
150, great.
all right, so I have the two drafts, and I'll just sort of polish them up a little bit, send them back to town council again, just for our final look. So is this something that we would advertise and put on the next meeting, or you want to see it again before we do that for the public comment portion?
Well, I think that because the exceptions are so marked up, I think probably we should see that one more time.
Don't we put anything else with it, or did I give you too much with the other reg?
No, No, I don't need anything else with it. So.
That's it for me. Thank you.
So do you want to talk about the Beaver Dam on Picker Pond?
Oh, yes. There's a beaver. Oh, yeah. We have to do that, don't we?
We were just almost like over there.
I didn't add it to my agenda. It's on yours. That was posted. Yeah, we got some calls that the Picker Pond was overflowing. Contacted Board of Health. They did their site inspection and had an emergency meeting and said, yes, the amount of flooding from the pond is or could potentially cause a number of septic systems to fail. So they're issuing an emergency certificate. I issued one on Friday that just said, yes, you can breach a small portion of the top of the dam just to bring the water level down to the normal pool elevation for the pond. But you have to keep an eye on the lodge, find the lodge, keep an eye on the lodge. And if the water can't go below the entrance to the lodge, because at this time of year, beavers should have kits. They also have the ability to put in any of the beaver deceivers, so the culvert and the fencing that goes around it to keep the beavers from blocking the culverts. And they have the authority to trap as well. So the bulk of the decision-making is, again, with the Board of Health. And we're working together with the Highway Department to figure out how to release a small amount of water at a time, so you're not flooding people downstream or causing erosion or sedimentation of the banks, but to relieve some of that flooding pressure. So yes, you would need to ratify that vote. Or issuing the emergency certificate.
Any questions for Jennifer? So I make a motion to issue the emergency certificate or approve the emergency certificate for the Picker Pond Beaver Dam partial breach.
Spady, a second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Blondie and I.
Spady, aye.
Thank you.
Nice job. Thank you. Have you seen the work? Jennifer, have you gone?
Oh, they haven't done it yet. I met the highway out there again today. They've just been so bogged down with tree removal and getting power back on, storm damage cleanup that they were hoping to start today. They didn't. They should be starting tomorrow morning. So I'll stop over and take another look and see how it works. But it's been great working with all the other departments to try to come up with a solution. So it's nice.
Yeah, this is not something that comes up every day. So I assume it's
No, the other departments have said, I've never seen this before. So yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, so I do want to take the opportunity to thank all town departments for the work they did over the past week. It was truly a Herculean effort to get this town back up and online, and I was offline for 4 days. So and I appreciated the moment it came back, all the hard work that it took to get to that point. So then, of course, I lost my internet as soon as it came back. But I do appreciate it, and I hope that all of you survived it safely and without too much problems. So, and I will entertain one more motion.
Oh, I would like to, before making a motion, there's some trees down on the trails in Clifford Grant. We could send out the word to some of our volunteers. Anyone's interested in clearing those? Would you like to know where they're located, or shall I email you?
Maybe a while before trail work happens, but
I'm in full hunting mode. I'll be out there after that.
Get your chainsaw going, Carol.
Yeah, well,
Don't make any noise.
I've recorded one. That's the problem.
It's quiet.
My suggestion, Carol, is it possible for you to reach directly out to Chris Patrick?
Well, I'm sure I can email him.
If you can download his app as well, he's using that, and that'd just be the quickest way to do it.
Which app is that?
Oh man, I can't remember off the top of my head. Well, Corey, do you know the name of it off the top of your head?
Absolutely not.
Hold on.
I could just send snap.
Trail Care app.
Trail Care app.
Yeah. download it, and then you just go on the trail, mark, you see all like, it says like tree blocking, you can't see it, tree blocking trail, so on, it'll mark a GPS, he'll know, he gets a ping, and he'll go out there. That's the way faster way. The emails just brought him down.
There you go. Now the next time you're out there, you just drop a
And
pin
it-
right where you are.
Did you check it today?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay. I'm surprised the mountain biker hasn't gone by yet, so maybe give it probably to the end of the week, you never know.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Call second. We hit for the cycle. Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, I.
Lundin, aye.
ADI.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Oh,
Thank
we have a
you.
new commissioner, don't we?
we do.
We
I,
do.
I looked on the town website the other day and it says that the seat has been filled.
I don't think
Surprise.
so. It hasn't been on this selectmen agenda. So I don't think so.
Something's up with the town website.
That could be. Well,
If we're trying to recruit people, then we want to let people know that there's a seat available.
yes, there is a seat available. We'll see you all in a couple weeks.
All right, good night.
See you soon.